This is MusicalTalk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. And we start today with a song from the award-winning British musical On Your Bike.
I forgot to bring flowers like a scallywag tyke.
He didn't bring flowers, which I really liked.
Well, flowers are a signal of the man's banality.
Roses aren't a substitute for personality.
We looked at the wine list, then opted for beers.
He commended my earrings.
And also her ears.
He did an impression a lot like the Queen.
I gave her a taste of my stand-up routine.
And I wasn't expecting a lot, but I felt the connection we
shot
shot.
through the starters, just breezing along.
When do we get to the bit where it all goes wrong? I'd almost forgotten the school trip he mentioned.
We went to the zoo and this kid stole a penguin.
He almost got home
Then got caught.
and detentioned.
But he got in the paper. He's kind of a legend.
And I wasn't expecting a blast, but I fell for that smile pretty
Past
fast.
11 and we're still going strong.
When do we get to the bit where it all goes wrong? The bit where he scratches his ass or starts sucking his thumb.
The bit where she calls me Graham.
Where he calls me mum.
She reveals she's a nun.
He reveals he's not single. Reveals he's infected with genital shingles. Admits he's a Mormon.
Admits she's a gorgon.
Reveals that Earth has been flat all along. When do we get to the bit
where it all goes wrong? Where it all goes wrong.
When will it go wrong?
I was planning to leave on my own, but I was suddenly taking her home.
Then a kiss at the door that was tender and long. What if we never get to the bit where it all goes wrong?
Hello and welcome to another edition of MusicalTalk. I'm Thos Ribbits. And I've been thinking that if Cole Porter and Borodin had somehow got together, we might have been treated to that wonderful musical, Kismet Kate, which, like a very unusual looking duck, would be the perfect double bill, but rolled into one. And on the subject of double bills, see what I've done there, we're going to be talking in this week and next week's episode of MusicalTalk about a double bill that you could have seen at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in 2023. And the two shows in question are Jingle Street and On Your Bike, a song from which we've already heard. And actually, over this week and next, you're going to hear a whole number of songs from those two shows. So if the prospect of listening to me isn't that exciting, do hang around for the songs. Now, taking two shows to Edinburgh has been done and will be done again, but it's a tall order. And given that fact, it's always nice when both shows turn out to be top-notch. But that was the case here for On Your Bike and Jingle Street. They were bought by a company called Chordstruck Theatre, who had previously brought On Your Bike to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in that difficult year 2021. Now, you will remember that was right in the middle of the COVID lockdown periods, and so getting anything to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, let alone onto a stage there, was already quite the triumph. But the show itself garnered amazing reviews and won the Best Musical at the Edinburgh Fringe Award for 2021. But roll on 2 further years and On Your Bike was back. And it came with another piece from the same creative team called Jingle Street. I had the pleasure of seeing both shows last year and they were both brilliant. The first show, On Your Bike, fully deserved its Best Musical Award from 2021, and Jingle Street for me, which was a new musical last year, was a 5-star production. It was witty, it was funny, it was meaningful, it had a message which it didn't labour, and it was overall one of the best things that I saw at last year's Fringe. And so delighted was I by those two shows, which were performed in a double bill every day for the run of the Fringe, which is once again quite the task, that I was determined to speak speak to some of the people behind it for MusicalTalk, and that's exactly what I did. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Joe Venable, the writer and producer of the two shows, Tom Hayes, one of the actors who played an important part in both shows, Mimi Pattinson, the director, and Alex Adenall, the choreographer and the assistant director. And together, the five of us had a wonderful conversation which you'll be able to hear over this week and next. We'll be slightly concentrating on Jingle Street next week, and we'll be slightly concentrating on Your Bike this week. But of course there'll be overlap in the conversation. So, just to bring us all up to speed, what are the two shows about? Well, I'll read you the blurb. Here's the blurb for Jingle Street. A hotshot ad writer wakes up to discover he can only speak in jingles. Can he escape the curse? Ad writer Colin Hollins is rich, successful and miserable. One day he wakes up to find he can only speak in TV jingles. Desperate to lift the curse, he meets Jasmine, an idealistic activist who seems to have a cure. The only trouble is, she finds him a repugnant sellout. Can he change for her, or is he doomed to a life of lonely pessimism and half-baked jingles? And you'll observe that's wearing its political leanings quite lightly, but touches on a lot of the cornerstones which we're hearing as part of the British general election campaign currently ongoing as this episode is broadcast. And if you like your politics meaningful but lightly delivered, then On Your Bike was more of the same. Here's the blurb for that show. Gemma and Aidan deliver food they can't afford for mega corporation Eatsaroo. But things get messy when it cuts their pay and starts muscling in on their budding romance. That's one weird love triangle. They resolve to group together and take on the bosses, but fighting $1 million algorithm isn't that easy. And it's also been described as the gig economy musical. So there we have it. That's the background and description of Jingle Street and On Your Bike. And in just a minute we'll hear the first half of that conversation that I had with Joe, Tom, Mimi and Alex about those two shows. But first, let's hear another song from the wonderful award-winning score from On Your Bike.
When you run a chicken shop, you've got to use your noggin. If KFK's start will go down like a letterboggin. Now I'm no spring chicken, but I'm kicking up a fuss, 'cause this street ain't wide enough for both of us. It ain't over till the fat end clocks. But if KFK move here, then we're all plucked. I'm starting a chant, I need you all to repeat and repeat. Don't let the chicken across the street. Don't let the chicken, don't let the chicken. So I'm talking to the neighbours here, stirring opposition, getting the word out. Don't let the chicken. I can't compete, it's too frustrating. They've got ketchup,
Real Coke,
and a hygiene rating. No one likes change, the past is best. Like before we had Ebola and Kanye West. Gotta bring back Woolworths,
pounds and ounces,
penny sweets, and good old-fashioned empty British high streets. I'm running amok and I'm riding my luck. Beyond protecting my own business, I don't give a cluck. I've made a campaign and it's working a treat. Don't let the chicken across the street.
So folks, get close. Let me tell you what my plan is. Tomorrow KFK come, I'm throwing spanners. When they get to their site, I'll have crept in tonight with snakes in my left hand, rats in my right, leaving mice, leaving lice, leaving stacks of skulls, condoms and needles and headless dolls. I got fresh manure, mixed in with soot, homemade top grade finger licking good. Wasn't that some murder flies, Adam Sandler merchandise, rotten trout, fish paste, whoops, I dropped some nuclear waste. Don't be shocked, don't look quite so stricken. This is raw, this is war, folks, and I'm not chicken.
I know it's not pretty, I know how it looks, but if KFK move here, my goose is cooked. I've got a campaign, so please share and retweet, and don't let the chicken across the street.
So my name's Joe Venable, and I've written And I'm also the producer of these 2 shows, which are called On Your Bike, which is a gig economy comedy. A gig economy comedy about sort of...
As they say, that's easy for you to say.
Indeed, you'd think the show tagline I would be really good at by now, apparently not. And I'm also producing them and doing the sound, which is a fun mix. So that's On Your Bike, and then the other one is called Jingle Street, which is about a hotshot ad executive who wakes up to find he can only speak in jingles. So that's me.
Yeah, and I'm Mimi Pattinson, and I'm the director of the 2 shows. I'm Alex Adnell. I'm the choreographer and assistant director for both On Your Bike and Jingle Street.
I'm Tom Hayes, and I'm cast for Jingle Street and On Your Bike, playing Colin and Felix.
Colin Olin?
Colin Hollins.
Oh, it's Hollins. I actually heard it as Colin Olin, which made me laugh inordinately, but I'm writing my own script, I'm so sorry.
We actually realised Colin Hollins was a terrible name because it doesn't rhyme with anything. There are no rhymes on the word Colin almost in the entire dictionary. I had a nightmare. Why did I do this?
You didn't think you could change it?
Yeah, I couldn't I? But once I'd submitted the thing to the On Your Bike to the Fringe website...
Yeah, it's set in stone forever, isn't it?
It really is. I love it.
Now, we have 2 shows that we want to talk about today, and they're both cracking shows. Now, but one has a history already, I think, and was indeed Show of the Year here at the Fringe in 2021.
We got so lucky in 2021, very blessed. We won, Best Musical from one reviewing body, which was lovely, and it's helped it come back.
You can mention the reviewing body. Who were they?
Oh, they were Musical Theatre Review.
Yeah.
Very nice people.
Yes.
Our favourite. It's not our favourites, sorry, MusicalTalk is our favourites.
If the world is full of like-minded people, I'm delighted, and that's all there is to it. No, very well deserved, and particularly in a difficult year, 2021.
Yeah.
But we also have Jingle Street, which is a new show for this year. So I think the obvious way of doing it is to talk about the first one first and the second one second. And I don't know if you tell me that's too controversial, but obviously there will be bleed from the 2 conversations because there's an enormous overlap in cast, crew, clientele, writers, goodness knows what. So let's start with On Your Bike. How did it happen? And are the magic words COVID writing going to come up into this? There was a lot of time suddenly. I'm hearing this story a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, COVID was the backdrop for that whole show. So I was at Cambridge University, which has a musical theatre society that famously produced Six, trades on that enormously.
But a lot of other stuff which is terribly good.
Absolutely.
I mean, it mustn't let other things be overshadowed.
Well, quite. I mean, Six does loom very large over the scene, but that was the first show that the Musical Theatre Society sent to Fringe, and because it was such a success, every year now they send one, and we applied, me and my friend Ben James. Could we write this? We'd written one show before that was a kind of silly heist comedy.
What was that called?
That was called No Cash Left on the Premises Overnight.
You're very plugged into capitalism, and we will be touching on this later.
I think a lot about capitalism.
Yes.
It looms large in my mind.
Looms large in your life, as it does for us all, of course. Well, I should say late capitalism.
Yes, I like late capitalism. It's a good phrase.
I don't think anyone else likes late capitalism, but not as a concept.
It gives the impression it could be ending. That's what I like.
Oh, I see. Yes. No, there'll be later capitalism, and then the'll be
you're right.
Zombie capitalism. It's the one. That's right.
Capitalism.
Do you want to buy my foot? I mean, that's where it's going.
That's where it's going, sadly.
But forgive me, taking a show to 2021, did you know you were going to make it to 21? Because 21 was certainly not on the cards, definitely. And indeed, it wasn't Speechmarks an official Fringe. It was an unofficial Fringe in real terms, wasn't it?
It was spectacularly touch and go. In fact, the year before I'd written a panto that was cancelled. It was so close to going on in late November, and then lockdown 2 happened. And then the lockdown in mid-2021 was due to lift 2 weeks before our rehearsal period started. Then Boris Johnson said, no, actually it's going to go on 2 weeks more because the R rate hasn't come down enough.
Yeah.
So the day our rehearsal period needed to start was the day they'd said lockdown would end. And it did indeed end, and we were able to bubble together all in one house and do rehearsals. There were some very, very stressful LFT tests. The show had to be squished from 1 hour to 50 minutes because they needed to clean in between shows.
Oh yes, that's a really interesting thing, because it's already, it's normally 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out anyway in Edinburgh, isn't it? The Edinburgh slot is famous.
Yeah.
So to squeeze that further, yes.
Very, very tough, stressful all the way.
Yeah, on your bike but quicker.
Yeah, quite. Which in a way was a good thing. You're forced to kind of pace it to cut the fat, and maybe that's what helped it resonate with audiences. I think especially when you're quite new to writing, being made to cut, trim is really valuable. But yeah, it was a spectacularly stressful Fringe. Every time your phone dinged, you were going, is it one of those notifications that tells you the Bluetooth you've been in contact with somebody? And sure
yes, of course.
On the last 2 days of Fringe, one of our cast was in contact with someone who might have had COVID and needed an LFT, so I ended up stepping in for 2 of the last 3 shows
to
play the role of Aidan, which was...
That is new information to me. You have kept that one very quiet, Joe.
paid him for 2 nights.
Now, can I ask, when you won the award, was it for the last 2 performances?
Do you know, I have a suspicion that they may have seen me and thought, yeah, that's that guy. So yeah, that was very, very surreal. And it's fascinating actually when you've watched a show 25 times and then suddenly it's like, now you do it. And I went on with my phone with the script thinking I'll definitely need the script, and I found that actually I knew every line. And
Your osmosis, learned by osmosis.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Not without trying. Scary.
But I think that's terribly brave actually as well, you know.
Well, it's nice because whatever you do, everyone loves you. You know, if you suck a bit, no one's going to that guy because they're all just like, wow, he knows some of the words.
Yeah,
He did a bit of dancing.
He didn't hit the wall.
Exactly, yeah. He didn't fall over that many times.
But of course, the other thing about the 2021 Fringe was, of course, the Scottish rules are different to the English rules, i.e. what's going to be in Cambridge isn't going to be the same as in Edinburgh. And they were slightly delayed up here, and that stopped a lot of people coming.
Really tough. It was a bit of a producer's nightmare, I think, because, they're trying to look up the rules in England, they're trying to look up the rules in Scotland. It's horrible. So I'm so glad to be back in a year when there's none of that. Oh, one less thing to worry about. A dozen other things to worry about.
But can I ask, I'm guessing from the I didn't know that story comments that no one here was involved in that first production.
No.
Well, that brings us very nicely then to this time's production. Now, some of you, in fact, I'd argue that are you all Fringe veterans in different ways? I know, Tom, you are, because I've seen you in Living with Sin, where you played a very, if I may say, memorable Roth.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there was a lot of leather involved in the costume.
I mean, there was more to the performance than the leather, but yes, the leather does stick in the mind to a degree, and that's due to lack of talcum powder on a hot day, I'm told. So I know that you were up here last year, and that was a Cambridge-related show, I think.
Yes, that was Cumps as well.
Yes, and let's say that again slowly, but with a big emphasis on the M.
Yes.
I don't think that helped, actually, but never mind.
Yeah, true. I'm digging myself a deeper and deeper hole here.
Do you know, it was recently the 25th birthday of Cumps, the Cambridge University Musical Theatre Society.
I thank you.
And they went into a shop and asked for a cake that said on it, I am a cunt, and the woman refused to do it. She would not do the cake.
Oh, really? Well, this is one of those things that really ought to go up to the High Court then, isn't it? Because it's exactly that kind of issue. And
discrimination. I feel very... Our cunt cake being forbidden is all wrong.
Congratulations, by the way, on your Silver Jubilee then.
Oh,
but so I know, Tom, you've been up here. Alex and Mimi?
I was here last year. I was performing a play called Blue and Pip, and I was Pip of Blue and Pip.
Nice to be in the title.
Yeah, exactly.
And did that capitalise on your movement and choreography skills, or were you just listen to me, an actor? Sorry, I apologise to all actors in the room.
There was a slight movement element, but no, it was predominantly just acting. Yeah.
Oh, you're multi-talented. Writing that down.
I claim to be.
Yeah, I haven't been here actually with a show since 2016, and I was performing then, but I was much younger and still acting then and not directing.
And was that with the university, or was that through other means?
No, it was actually sort of related to school. It was kind of a group of us who'd done a lot of drama at school together, and it was a devised, like, verbatim show that it was all about luck and chance, and we gathered lots of stories that people had about fate and all these sorts of things, and kind of put together this actually quite physical theatre-y, very GCSE sort of show. But yes, it was fun.
I think verbatim theatre is such an interesting thing. I saw a verbatim musical once, and it was actually we're all aware of London Road, obviously, but it was called Untold Stories, and it was about soldier stories throughout history. But it was terribly good. It's available, I think, still on YouTube. Anyway, we move on. So we're 2022. You all have some experience of the Fringe. You're obviously all working together in a creative way in Cambridge. Am I right in thinking, I think you've told me off the record that actually you finished your studies, but you're now in a group or a company, is that right? So what I'm travelling off in two different directions. I suppose the question is, what is the conglomeration of you all now, and then how did you decide you were going to come to Cambridge with an old and a new show? Because actually bringing two shows is excitingly challenging. I'll just park that very rambling question and see if you want to attack any side of it.
Well, I think we're all really interested in where you go after Cambridge Theatre, because theatre in Cambridge is amazing. You might have been to the ADC Theatre,
yes.
Home of the Footlights. People just go to it because of that brand. It's wonderfully equipped. Cambridge money is phenomenal. And
so it has. So legend has it. Yeah.
We're very, very lucky. And then suddenly you leave that, and it's like, what do? I don't, have the contacts in this industry or anything that. Many practical skills that you need necessarily.
You've left the infrastructure behind in a strange way.
That's exactly it. There's this lovely thing. You pitch a show to the ADC, they say yes, you do the show. Whereas now you're kind of out on your own. So I think part of the idea with Chordstruck is can we try and make...
And that's the name of your company, Chordstruck.
Yes, Chordstruck
with an H.
Theatre. Mimi came up with that. It's really good.
If it's bad, it was her idea.
To try and say, what could we do? How can we try and move forward with theatre? And at the moment, we've only been able to think as far as Fringe. We kind of have tunnel vision on this one project. But I think the dream is that it could turn into something that can go onwards and keep making theatre together. It's just... so lovely to get that chance.
And as I think I said yesterday, obviously, presumably the Mischief Theatre is now the avatar for this, because they finished, they came out together, as it were, as a group, formed this company, and they've done rather well here at the Fringe, actually, to begin with. The Play That Goes Wrong was a one actor here. We saw it years ago. Yeah, and still very good. But they work together, and they also work separately, and that seems to be a very successful model if you could make it work. But it's handy to have the success, isn't it?
Seems like it can be done, and obviously we're very lucky to have On Your Bike. It seemed like bringing that show back to be a slightly more something that's been tried and tested, and hopefully would do okay.
Your banker, as it were.
Exactly, and then it lets you take a chance on a second show, which I think is something we're really passionate about, creating new work as well as bringing back stuff from before.
So you formed your company with the excellent name, and you knew that you wanted to come to this year's Fringe. But how did you make... you've said, I can understand it, but putting on 2 shows is a big challenge. So when did you make that decision? When did you plunge? And then how did everyone join that project, actually?
So December, January...
This year?
I kind of decided, to put out a call out to say... And that was testing the waters. Will anyone actually go for this? Am I crazy? I kind of put out this call
Sorry, the two are not necessarily connected.
Absolutely. If anything, craziness may be a requirement to be at this Fringe. You don't have to be mad to work here, but it certainly helps.
Also, just before you go on with the story, it was the sweetest call out you've ever seen in your life. It was all about sort of like democracy and kindness and love and all of these things, which is very venerable brand, which is definitely what attracted me to apply.
It's not late capitalism at all.
No, it was really lovely.
We're trying to smash up late capitalism with love and democracy.
If I may say, those are the appropriate tools.
Yeah, don't you think?
Completely.
They're very keen on those. So and I was very, to be honest, startled by how many people responded, because I, written this one show, and I don't see why anyone would follow me to Edinburgh, but people want to act, people want to make stuff, and I was incredibly lucky to get a really amazing team. I was scared because On Your Bike in 2021 had just a wonderful team, amazing actors, and I thought, am I going to end up with a much ropier group, realistically? Because
people I hate.
Exactly.
And it happened, didn't it?
That's where this is going. It's a surprise that I hate you all.
An unexpected expose.
But got really lucky, and now there's 8 of us, and it seems to be going reasonably well so far. I don't know, you guys tell me now if you're...
Well, yes, I'd like to bring everyone else in, if I may, and say, the joining story. You've obviously had this terribly nice request to join, but you've all presumably got the burning, I'd love to be in Edinburgh again this year. So do you mind, I just want to hear, what made you decide that you would and that you could?
Yeah, so I think I probably was one of the last to join the team. I think the cast had been assembled, and Mimi and I had worked on a show before. We did Tick Tick Boom together. For which I was, she directed and I was choreographer. It was my first time choreographing a musical. Your first time directing a musical.
Which in retrospect is so crazy.
It was bold.
Because both of us were.
Choice,
It's a known commodity and a successful one at that.
And this is just after the film had come out, so it was it was fun. It was like a wild time, but it turned out very well in the end. I think we can say. But so Mimi and I knew each other from that, and actually bumped into each other in the aisle of Sainsbury's in the centre of Cambridge.
Oh, the glamour.
And she was like, I'm doing this project. Keep an eye out for the choreographer call-outs. And I was like, I will, Mimi, I will. And from that point on, I was
can you pass me the bread?
Yeah, exactly. And from that point on, I was kind of like, mentally, I was like, I want to. So I'd seen, after Fringe, On Your Bike had done a short run at a local Cambridge theatre, Town and Gown. And I'd seen it, and I just thought it was like phenomenal. And so when the chance came to actually be part of restaging it, re-choreographing it, and then doing something new from Joe, I was like, okay, I'm sold. I will do that, because I just loved On Your Bike so much. So yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah, so I was pretty certain that I wasn't going to come back to Fringe this year. Actually, I was like, you know what? It's it's quite expensive, particularly to be up for a full month, which I was with Living with Sin, and I was like, it was a fantastic experience, but I think it wasn't in my plans. And then I saw this call out, and I was like, I saw no cash back in my first year, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And I was like, oh, I'd love to work with Joe. Like, it was a fantastic play. So I was like, you know what? I'll say, oh yeah, I'm interested in sending an audition. And then I've been convinced.
It was a spectacular audition as well. This guy sings "Moving Too Fast" from the last 5 years like nobody's business. I was just sat there like, okay, let's ring this guy.
Well, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to pay you the compliment saying I do think you have a certain stage charisma.
Thank you so much.
In various roles, because I've now seen you in 3 roles at least. So, and they're also nicely delineated, which isn't always the case, you know. And you can move. And we'll be talking about that relation between acting, dancing, comedy, it's a hard thing to pull off, actually, and I think you do it in spades in a tight suit. So, in fact, let's be honest. I think your costume options in all 3 shows. I mean, we've got leather, Roy's T-shirt in bright red, even when you change the name of the company, and a very snazzy suit. We all understood. It also sort of ties in with Felix's. We're getting into the plot here, but Felix's slightly run-down nature anyway.
Yes.
He changes the cinema shop with the blue tacked A4 poster, but everything else stays where it is. I quite like that. No, I've changed, but it's very similar. So, sorry, forgive me. And obviously, Mimi, you must have jumped on quite early as director.
Yes,
right?
yeah, I did. Just to say on the Tom Hayes front, we have an interesting
as
issue as well. Because, exactly. Because I have tried to cast Tom Hayes in every show that I've done in Cambridge. And he is always at the last minute, actually, I don't think I'm going to do it. And so when it came to this, and we said, we've got to get Tom Hayes to do this show. And I went, well, both of us went for a coffee with Tom, so I bought him lots of cake. Please do this show, Tom. And so I feel very honoured that I finally got Tom Hayes to do one of my shows.
It's easy to bribe with cake, though.
Honestly, I'm a simple man.
With cake. We use a lot of cake bribery here at Chordstruck
Tea biscuits
Theatre,
and a wafer.
It's our favourite.
Big strategy.
Yeah, Joe's a great baker, so that's nice.
It goes a long way. Homemade cake, people are like, what? I can't believe it.
I'll do it, whatever you want.
Yeah, especially students who don't have ovens in their houses, so they see a cake and they're like, whoa,
wow,
never seen one of these.
Yeah, very early on in our kind of meetings around Chordstruck, when I suddenly got ill for a week, and my housemate went, Mimi, someone's just left something at the door for you. And I went down and it was a Tupperware full of flapjacks with a note written like in the style of a child, like with crayons, being like, Mimi, I heard you was ill, so I made you these flapjacks. And he'd drawn a picture of me and like an arrow that was like, this is you when you're better, with a smiley face. And of course it was from Joe, and I've now got that note on my wall because that was such a lovely moment in our relationship, I think.
This now means I need to ask one further question of the writer. Do you use crayon?
All the time. We love a good crayon.
I haven't finished a script, but there are pictures.
Yes. He actually can't write a script without crayons.
Sometimes I do the rubbing thing where you just put something behind the paper and then that's...
It's a coin!
Mimi, we're directing a coin.
Very capitalist, though, once again. Thematic.
So abstract.
Now, let's talk about Jingle Street, which is the new show then. So you've got one in the bank, you've got your team building up, but it was envisaged that you would do 2. How did you give birth to this child?
Sure. So I've been thinking for a long time about a show to do with jingles and advertising. I guess it's the water we swim in a way. We're surrounded by adverts, and the more so now we seem to have let them into our homes. They're on our laptops and our phones, and Google plays one every time you want to watch the football highlights.
There's a solution to that.
Yes, and I do.
I don't watch them.
You know, my main problem, I have AdBlock Plus, and it means a lot of websites.
That wasn't what I was going for.
Oh, what's your?
I don't watch the football.
That's clever as well.
It's a bit more basic.
Visionary. Yes. So I was thinking jingles would be so interesting to mash up with musical theatre in some way, but I never quite found...
Well, they're a mini-song, aren't they? Let's be honest. I mean, that is all they are.
And they're fantastic. Like, the skill to write them and get them stuck in your ear is actually quite impressive, despite the fact that we kind of think of them as trash.
We hate them.
Yeah, we hate them, we love them. But then it was only when I hit on this idea of an ad exec wakes up to find he can only speak in jingles, that kind of made it work and made it seem like something that might actually sell some tickets rather than...
Well, it brings a lovely absurdist element to it, doesn't it? And absurdist comedies, I think, sell. They certainly sell to me. And, I saw that and I was, I'm in. And then when I was in, I was very in. Because I very much like it. I mean, I just think it's great. I really like it. It's interesting, the relationship, because I want to talk about, actually, we've been touching on late capitalism. I'm going to keep using that phrase if I may, but your two shows are very radical in a very sweet... Well, maybe this is the baker in you, but, there's a lot of messages in there, but they aren't in any way preachy. I think people could ignore them if they don't want them, or they could just take it as part of the plot and therefore not let it affect them. But there is quite a lot of very good stuff, which is a critique, let's call it that way, of modern society, globally and nationally, which is sugared so beautifully that it slips down without anybody noticing, or about people necessarily noticing, or so it seems to me. I'm really intrigued by that. I've seen a lot of shows here. The lightness of touch when making a point is like a mortgage, may go up and down, and it's very often quite heavy. I've been to a show that was marred by quite a lot of preaching. I'm not naming names, but it's much harder to take a sermon with songs. I suppose most sermons ultimately do have songs, don't they? But let's not go down that route. Whereas I like the lightness of touch here. Now, obviously, that comes from the writing, but it comes from the entire direction, performances, everything. It's a collaborative effort, as theatre is. But if we could talk just briefly about that thematically, did you go in knowing that's what you wanted to do, or is it that you had some pieces which then thematically these connected into? I suppose what came first? Yeah. The chicken or the egg marketing board?
I am very passionate, I think, about politics and about trying to change the way we've organised our society that seems to leave some people very miserable and some people very happy. So I think that is very much...
Poor and rich may also be inserted.
Well, yes, let's use that, poor and rich. That seems like a problem, and I'm very passionate about theatre that drives change, that we don't just do this for fun, not that we can't do it for art's sake, but that we try and use these things as somehow vehicles to drive change, to make people think, and it's so hard to make people change their minds. I've spent a lot of time, I confess I'm a member of the Labour Party, and I fly out on doorsteps, and it's the most joyless thing, watching people who either don't care or have firm set opinions against you.
We should just say that you have plopped this into the Jingle Street. There is door canvassing.
Door knocking,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Very much something I've done in family.
Method writer, marvellous.
Absolutely. So thinking about how you change people's mind, and I think art has changed my mind at times. That you watch something and you go, "Oh, I see what I thought." You've taken me to a world. You've shown me a character. You've made me empathise with somebody, and it's forced me to reconsider what I think.
You can illustrate a point from a different direction.
Absolutely.
And because people are engaged with the piece, if it's any good, then actually, yes, exactly as you say, it just gives you a slightly more 360 degree. There's terrible maths, but you understand what I'm saying.
Completely. And I mean, Mimi's been instrumental in bringing that kind of, I think, bringing heart and character and humanity into these political messages.
Yeah, I think when you were asking what drew us all to Joe's work or to want to do this project, I think for me it really was that sweetness, and I think there's a way in which Joe's writing, it's sort of like joy and playfulness and irreverence is the resistance.
Yes.
In some way, and I think there's a way in which capitalism sort of wants us all to be miserable and stressed, and have that sort of scarcity attitude. And these are shows where tonally it's always abundance, and the whole kind of point of Jingle Street really, and this is sort of slowly materialised as we've been doing edits and everything, and kind of playing around with it in rehearsal as well, but is this idea that, despair over climate change or whatever isn't the answer, that we do, even if we think it's a lost cause, we have to learn to love it, and we have to learn to be joyful in the face of that, and keep loving each other in the face of that.
Well, today's lost cause is tomorrow's paradigm, isn't it? So.
Yes. So I think that what you mentioned there is really a really important part of our sort of shared vision as a company, I think.
But it's all that balance, isn't it? It is that balance, or so it seems to me. The success of the show is getting the balance right. But actually, as a punter, just sitting there in the audience enjoying the show at whatever level one wants to, I very much enjoyed the fact that there was some stuff going in that wasn't, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, as someone who was paid rather more than I once said, a Sherman brother. But can we talk about that in performance as well? Because actually it's, in a sense, on the stage as the actor, but also through, the movements and choreography, direction and dance, of which there's plenty and plenty good. But how... I'll start with you, Tom, if I may, and then we'll talk in a minute about choreography as well, because actually it's all got a point to play. But how do you get that across? Now, I know this is a terribly broad question to ask of an actor. You've got the character arc to go through, which is, forgive me, charming but despicable all the way through to charming but lovable. Good, from bad to good. I've simpled that down, he said, simplifying the word simplification. But also getting the points across in a, you've got to deliver these points somehow. I know it's a terrible question, do what you can with it.
I think it is kind of a tough line to tread in terms of kind of when we're going from what is kind of a bad to good kind of arc.
Yeah.
You kind of don't want to necessarily alienate the audience kind of too early on, because there are some very distasteful things that Colin does. You know, there's this jingle about drowning immigrants quite early on.
That's probably the most on-the-nose political point, actually.
Which yes, where you know the Conservative Party is mentioned explicitly, and you know that at that point there's always a chance you're going to kind of alienate certain people or really get people on board. And so I think there's
anti-conservative.
Yes.
Just so that it doesn't sound like we're doing jingles for.
Yes, good point.
Well, actually,
just so we don't alienate all our audience.
Yes.
Well, in fairness, the jingles are sort of for a particular party. Let's not name them. But the tone of the piece is in another direction.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. Before I tarnish our good name. But kind of making sure that you kind of communicate to the audience that you're in on this, you know, kind of that delivering it with a splash of comedy, but also kind of with enough intensity to say, okay, we're not just here to do a silly play, even though this irreverence is the kind of binding kind of glue behind kind of both shows, I think, but that actually there can be a couple of stings here and there, but yeah, balancing that I suppose is
But do you find that easy, or do you do it different ways, different nights? Have you pushed the envelope in different directions to get slightly different flavours of the message across?
So we've definitely done a lot of me and Mimi kind of.
That's a great sentence, me and Mimi. Anyway, but carry on.
Like a couple of nights ago, really kind of looked through the jingles and completely redid like some of the jingles to just kind of draw different things out of it.
We should say these are jingles specifically written for the show.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, these are for products you didn't know you needed.
But trying to kind of draw in kind of physicalities and different kind of pitches and intonations from kind of existing kind of world.
Feel and flavour.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that we're drawing on a kind of a reality that people know, but also shifting it to suit our specific message at that point.
Yeah. So the canvas is tethered to the ground in some way, but moving in the wind or whatever.
I was just. Sorry, I was just going to quickly say on that point that you mentioned Tom being charming twice, and Tom is very charming, and I think that was one of the things that we were trying to do is how do we make sure that we get that kind of slightly dislikable element at the beginning, and also making sure that his change is obviously related to Jasmine and his relationship with Jasmine, but it's not just because of her, that it is coming from within in some way, and you're not fully into that trope of the woman changes the man, that sort of thing. So that was an interesting thing to play with, I think.
I think charm in itself is an interesting thing, because charm can be a sign of, in the broadest sense, sociopathy. It can be used to manipulate, but it can also be a sign of a good nature.
Yeah.
And actually, it seems to me, ultimately, the journey that we see Colin go on, it sort of has to be that his charm is based on a fundamentally good nature underneath, even if it's been obscured by the rottenness. He's not a sociopath. He's actually he is able to find redemption, and you can't find redemption if you don't have it in you somewhere. So it seems to me,
which we kind of see in that thing where he reveals actually he did some reforestation, volunteering, but then it's like
the echoes of a former good life.
Yes, and that I think that was a rewrite as well, actually, that really showed that actually there is goodness inside him.
I mean, it was originally he went around hitting babies with sticks. The tonally much better.
Yeah.
Which I think is in all of us in a way, and I hope Jingle Street's message is perhaps that most of us have latent good in us, even if we're doing mischievous things.
Mischievous, lovely.
Yeah. But it still speaks to this kind of a feeling of disillusionment, perhaps, with the state of the world, which I think is so real. I mean, I also. I don't know, Joe and I have spoken about this. I have also written on this on various points, but this kind of disillusionment about, like, is there any point in changing? And that's kind of the central conflict is actually, is there any point? Do we just sell ourselves to late stage capitalism, or do we actually try and fight it? And that's kind of, for me, is one of the key, one of the best parts of Colin's arc, is that, like, actually he's not a bad person. It's just this, like, very real disillusionment, and it's like, well,
he's bought into the world he's found himself in his early life, or landed in after an earlier phase. But I think that's fair. Can I also, however, touch upon your speciality?
Thank you.
Which is movement and choreography.
Yes.
Now, how do you? To me, this is in a realm beyond my. What you do is magic. What you all do is magic, actually. But I've got less handle on dance than anything else because I'm an idiot. But how are you able to emphasise those hidden points through movement and dance?
Interesting. Yeah, it's
sorry, forgive me, just to preface this, dance is often seen as a throwaway extra,
Yeah.
and it isn't, or it can be, of course, but it can so often really make a piece.
No, I couldn't agree more on both points, that dance is often overlooked in terms of musicals because it's just part of what you are accustomed to seeing, hopefully, or sometimes perhaps not. But I think it's really interesting approaching shows like this, which are so narrative and aren't about spectacle so much. Like there's, you've got your 42nd Street, which I'm a massive fan of, but it's a big dance element, which is.
Did I see you in the audience at Sadler's Wells?
Probably. Front row, desperate look, crying as the tap dancing starts because it's so wonderful. Anyway, and with shows like this, that it's it's a small cast, not necessarily specialising in dance, but very talented dancers anyway. But with dance, it's like this interesting line to tread of like, where is movement going to serve the narrative, and actually, especially with a show like Jingle Street, which has this kind of magical realism element to it. For me, part of what I was really excited to do was create a world through the movement. We've got a lot of kind of moments where it's convincing through dance as well as through song, which is kind of which I hope adds a little element of whimsy and kind of a comedy to the show. I guess part of what I hoped to do with the movement is add a comedy where possible, given that it's such a funny show that it's actually throw in.
Whimsy is a lovely word, by the way. I'm still dancing in the pleasure of that one. I think that's beautiful. World building is the other thing you said.
Yeah.
And actually that's quite interesting because, it seems so ridiculous to say it because it seems so self-evident that obviously performance is more than radio because you can see it. You can have a very successful play where two people sit around a table and do not move, but actually this isn't what we're getting here. It's a dynamic piece, and actually dynamism often needs to be underlined by dynamic movement, and you can do that by having people walking around or standing behind their chair with their hands on it looking earnest. We've all seen those plays as well, but I like the idea of world building because it's quite an expansive world that we're getting. I mean, first of all, it's touching on global issues, so you can say in a sense it is the world, but even within the geographic world that we're being offered, is it Fingal Street?
Fingal Street, yeah.
Thank you. Is the Madison Avenue, to use the Americanism for jingles here, and but then we've also got the suburb area where knocking on doors and politics is taking place, and I mean those are the two principal areas. It seems to me there's obviously a lot of others. And then the stage design, actually, I really like the ex-zebra crossing. First of all, it's incredibly striking as you come in. It's the first thing you see, plus our actor sitting at the four corners. You think, well, I tell you what it reminded me of, and this actually funny fits in again with post-capitalism. It reminds me of the Monopoly board at one level. So when I saw them on the corners, they said, "Oh, she's good."
It's another layer that we hadn't even anticipated. Love that.
But it did feel like that, and obviously that you see. I mean, obviously a Monopoly board isn't a crisscross, but actually it looks like spaces on a board. But also it suggests an urban environment. It allows for movement. Also, just black and white is a really striking thing to see in essentially black box theatre, even though you're in the round essentially. But no, I like it coheres in lots of different ways to create this world, but the world isn't necessarily a realistic one, or rather, it's one step. It's taken out, moved across, and then plopped back in again, isn't it? Is that what
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about when you were asking Alex about kind of how the movement ties things in. It made me think about the sort of slightly cartoony and sort of graphic design element of the show that. Like when we were looking at Pinterest boards trying to design, get designs for the poster and stuff, you look at these old ads and they're all very like pop arty and bold and colourful, and that sort of kick-started my thinking around like the aesthetics for the show. And I think a lot of the movement, like when you get something like the song Walking, which is very nightmarish, has that kind of bold cartoon-like sort of slightly caricatured feel to it, and I think the whole time we're trying to tread that line in performance between like leaning into that caricature, which has something of the ad world about it, but also has something of Joe's childlike heart about it, which is a really nice kind of duality there, and then also the subtlety of, oh no, we actually believe these relationships and these characters, and that crosswalk was very much how do we play the farce of the show. And in most of these fringe theatres, you have one or two wings, and there's just no way you could do the show with actors coming in from one or two wings. They have to be like running across the stage, going in and out, and so that having that cross kind of allowed us to play out to the sides in the thrust, and also have that sense of sort of people, you know, coming in and out and
also,
crossing each other, and like, all of these funny slip-ups.
Cross wires, miscommunication, like going one way or the other.
And interconnectivity. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just say also again, when we were doing poster design, we kept looking at these images that people have made of streets that were piano keys. So it's like crosswalks, but also piano keys.
Yes, of course.
And so we felt that was a nice sort of tie-in as well. Yeah.
Interesting use of the American there, by the way. Crosswalks.
Yeah,
took a second for that penny to drop. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's a great prop. I mean, Fringe is so hard, and we talked a lot about hanging things and can we fly things, and you really can't. But something that goes on the ground is just, there's a stroke of genius really by Mimi.
And you have 5 minutes to get in and out, and I noticed it was ever so slightly, sufficiently secured by a tiny bit of black masking tape on each strand of the street, if you will.
Yeah. That's me and Mimi. Crawling along the floor with our gaffer tape.
Dirty dancing moment when I have to sort of crawl along it to flatten it out. Alex is singing to me, baby.
This is the inside knowledge that we're all after. Joe Public doesn't clock a thing. I think you were about to say something and I cut you off rudely.
Well, it's been really interesting with props. I'm the producer, and obviously Mimi comes to me with ideas of things she wants for the set, and as producer you have to kind of go, no, we must be tight with the purse strings. But then I'm also the writer, so I want it to look great. So I'm there in this kind of strange midpoint, and actually the vinyl worked really well on the floor because it's affordable, achievable. It's actually a flipping nightmare to take it up and down every day if we go to great
Must be
ordeals.
heavy on the stairs.
Heavy on the stairs, horrible on the train. We came with all our props on the train.
Don't talk about the train journey. Let's not go there.
We've got one of those from London. Yeah.
Oh, crikey, it's grim. But to kind of think laterally about what we can achieve in a Fringe space, that crosswalk felt like a good investment of effort.
I wanted to hang all the objects that are advertised from the ceiling, but that was one step too far, I think,
That's when you get the
our
Palladium.
10-minute get-in.
Yeah.
Picture the scene, we set up a strike.
10,000 riders all ditching their bikes.
Working together, it's their darkest of fears. We're
Forcing their fingers out of their ears. It feels like we can.
It feels like we should.
It feels like a moment to change things for good.
Cause sometimes it takes a thunderbolt to really
Change the view.
Out of the blue, we'll be ratcheting up the heat. We're hopping off our bikes and on the streets. Raising the stakes, we'll slam on the brakes. We've got what it takes when we're out of the blue. There's a sense we can fight for real. We strike like lightning for a better deal. You never know when change comes through. When change comes through, out of the blue. We really wish we could be working. We'd like to do our part. But it's called a 0-hour contract, and we're taking that to heart.
Regrettably, we're opting out.
The rats have left the race.
There'll be no more trudging round to fund the boss's trip to space.
The gloves are off, the time is right.
When the iron is hot, we gotta
Strike! Out of the blue, we'll be ratcheting up the heat. We're hopping off our bikes and on the street. Raising the stakes, we'll slam on the brakes. We've got what it takes when we're out of the blue. There's a sense we can fight for real. We strike like lightning for a better deal. You never know when change comes through. When change comes through, out of the blue.
I went after KFK, their franchise is in tatters. We ran them out of town and left them deeply fried and battered. We didn't let the chicken stage a poultry coup. And if we can take on KFK, who knows what you can do?
Who knows what you can do?
Out of the blue, we'll be ratcheting up the heat. We're hopping off our bikes and on the street.
Raising the stakes, we'll slam on the brakes. We've got what it takes when we're
Out of the blue, there's a sense we can fight for real. We'll strike like lightning for a better deal. You never know when change comes through. Out of the blue, I
found someone to share the ride. We'll face each new disaster side by side, you and I.
Dreams the way we planned them.
If we buy a tandem, you're everything I asked for,
And a little bit.
Out of the blue, we'll be ratcheting up the heat. We're hopping off our bikes and on the street, raising the stakes, we'll slam on the brakes. We've got what it takes when we're out of the blue. There's a newcomer in the ring. They're on the ropes, they're gonna feel us swing. You never know when change comes through, when change comes through. Out of the blue. Out of the blue, out of the blue, we're coming out of the blue, out of the blue,
Out of the blue. Out of the blue.
off your bike and on the street, feel the power, feel the heat, there's no barrier, we're not smashing through, out of the blue.
And there we are, another song from On Your Bike. The songs you've heard today come from the recording of the 2021 cast, and you can find it on Spotify, so do go and look for it. The whole score is excellent. And of course, before that, you heard the first half of the conversation that I held with Joe Venable, Tom Hayes, Mimi Pattinson, and Alex Adenall about On Your Bike and Jingle Street. And you can hear the second part of that conversation next week when we concentrate slightly more on Jingle Street. And as an added bonus, there'll be some songs from that show as well, from a live recording in this case, plus an extra special exclusive cut song recording, thanks to Joe Venable, which I can tell you now is such a clever and wonderful song that you'll be glad that you've had an opportunity to hear it. Well, it's time for me, I think, to be on my bike, but I do hope this episode has been right up your Jingle Street, and if it has, do join me again, and indeed Joe, Tom, Mimi and Alex next week for more of the same, with songs aplenty. And to take you there, let's finish the episode in the way that you're surely expecting, and I'm not one to confound expectations, so here I go with that magic word, goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2024, except for the songs where the copyright remains with the original creators. And my thanks go to them for allowing me to play their wonderful songs in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and follow us on the usual social media networks like Facebook, Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you want to follow me on the latter, you can. At Musical Talk Thos. I will not be asking you a series of questions. It really is a conversation. And obviously, as there's four of you who all know each other, it's absolutely fine to talk amongst yourselves. And if one of you says, oh, but you said that, and I don't agree, and blah, 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 you know, do talk amongst yourselves, or if something comes up. The fun of this is hearing people talk about things about which they're passionate. Now, I love musical theatre, that's why I do this. I only talk about shows I love. Take that compliment. Squirrel away, move away. And then the profile of a conversation can be anything from 20 minutes to an hour, whatever it is. So it'll be what it is, if you're happy with that. Right, I'm going to ask you one by one just to give me a very quick level. Not that it matters too much, but I just want to make sure no one's madly out. And the traditional thing, as I'm sure you're aware, is what did you have for breakfast? So may I start with you, and we'll work around the table?
I'm afraid my answer is pretty minimal. I had a cup of tea for breakfast. I'm probably going to go on the hunt for some sort of pastry later.
It is the brew that refreshes.
Yes.
Thank you. Also, you have a beautiful, clear voice. Thank you.
I too haven't made the daily little run yet, but I had a banana and a satsuma and some water, and I'm feeling
Oh,
great.
crikey.
Yes.
I hear health.
Yeah, got to get the vitamins in.
Yes. Also, your voice is clear as a bell, as I would expect. Let's find out if this tradition can continue.
I feel the pressure's really on now. I had 2 slices of toast and a cup of tea that Emily made me because she was in a nice mood and making tea, and that made me very happy.
Is there a suggestion that sometimes she's not in a nice mood and poisons tea?
On the contrary, well,
Good.
The poison tea hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah.
If I keel over part way, then we'll know.
Well, I'm sorry to say the writer is often dispensable later on.
It's so true. What will I do?
It's me. I also did not have breakfast. It's
dear.
terrible with
Hello.
the breakfastless
Yeah.
groups.
Please don't faint on me, everyone.
Yes, but I feel good actually. Bit of what do they say? Fasting. Good.
Okay. Now that kind of thing's going to happen all the time. We'll just work through that. Unless something becomes really, as I say, unless 20 school children come past, marching in strict harmony and singing in not, then we'll be fine.
It's very Von Trapp.
Yeah. It's a sound trap, I'll give you that.